I was humbled to place my hand upon the wall and to pray in that holy space for wisdom from God.
This week on Christian World News, on his first international trip, President Donald Trump stands and prays on holy ground. And tackling terrorism, the president also visited Saudi Arabia, where he called on the Muslim world to cast out extremists. Plus, new attacks on Christians in Asia. Now some fear that ISIS is expanding its reach. And hello everyone, welcome to this week's edition of Christian World News. I'm George Thomas. Wendy Griffith is on assignment. Donald Trump has made his first overseas trip of his presidency. It's been called the World Religion Tour because he visited Riyadh, Jerusalem, and Rome. He began the trip in Saudi Arabia, where he made an important speech to Muslim leaders about taking on terrorism. David Brody reports from Riyadh.
Swaying to the music and feeling positive vibes. That sums up the president's red carpet trip here to Saudi Arabia. But it was his message to Arab leaders about terrorism that grabbed the spotlight.
A better future is only possible if your nations drive out the terrorists and drive out the extremists. Drive them out. Drive them out of your places of worship. Drive them out of your communities. Drive them out of your holy land. And drive them out of this earth.
And by driving terrorists out of this earth, Trump made clear where they would end up.
If you choose the path of terror, your life will be empty, your life will be brief, and your soul will be fully condemned.
There is a reason that President Trump came here to Riyadh, Saudi Arabia first. Because when it comes to Israel, well, that's an unbreakable bond. It's been that way for decades. Here in Saudi Arabia, a bit of a different story. The president wants to make sure that he has Saudi Arabia and many other Muslim-majority countries on board when it comes to fighting ISIS.
That's why the president did not publicly call out the Saudi royal family on its poor human rights record. Senior administration officials tell CBN News those points were made in private conversations. The focus here remains the fight against terrorism. Evangelical leader Franklin Graham told CBN News Saudi Arabia should be held accountable because they basically fund terrorism by preaching the doctrine of Wahhabism, a radical view of Islam.
We don't need to be kissing up to them. And I think it's time that we have a president who will stand up to Saudi Arabia. But whether that will happen or not, I don't know.
It's clear terrorism won't stop with the flick of a switch, but the president hopes the launch of a global counter-extremism center will have an impact. Its goal is to take the fight against radical Islamist ideology into cyberspace. The White House also got 6 Persian Gulf countries to sign an agreement to not finance terrorist organizations. The proof is in the pudding on that one. The Saudi foreign minister knows transformation is needed in his region.
If we can change the conversation in the U.S. and in the West from enmity towards the Islamic world to one of partnership, we will have truly changed our world, and we will have truly drowned the voices of extremism, and we will have drained the swamps from which extremism and terrorism emanates.
Senior administration officials tell CBN News that ultimately this is all about marching the ball down the field against fighting ISIS. And remember here, it's important to note, Saudi Arabia is a strong player in the Middle East, but so is Iran. And Iran is a common enemy of both Saudi Arabia and America. So a stronger Saudi Arabia here in the Middle East helps American interest, as Donald Trump would say, big league. David Brody, CBN News in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia.
So the second and most important stop of the president's tour was Israel. Mr. Trump has talked about trying to accomplish what so many have failed to do, bring a successful peace deal between Israel and its enemies. Again, David Brody has that story from Jerusalem.
Peace in the Middle East. How many times have we heard that before? But could things be different now that President Trump is on the scene? This peace process has never seen anything quite like him.
Before Donald Trump became president, he was known as one of the best deal makers in the entire world. Well, now he's come to Israel hoping for what he calls the ultimate deal. Peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians. It's not going to be an easy task, plenty of stumbling blocks ahead, but one thing is for sure, all roads lead through Jerusalem. It's the ultimate stumbling block in any two-state solution. Both the Palestinians and Israelis see the holy city as their capital. Official U.S. policy considers it disputed territory. But as a candidate, Trump told CBN News he was ready to move the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
I am for that 100%. We are for that 100%.
As president, however, he dialed that back in our interview in January.
There's certainly a chance of it, absolutely. But we're doing very detailed studies on that, and we'll come out very soon. I hate to do that because that's not usually me, studies.
Right.
It's usually I do what's right. But this has two sides to it. It's not easy.
That's because a provocative move like that might disrupt the peace process before it even gets going. So this trip, with no embassy announcement, definitely disappointed many Israelis and evangelical supporters back in the United States. He did make history, though, becoming the first sitting president to visit the Western Wall. Some see that as a positive signal, although some in the Trump administration won't admit the wall is part of Israel. It's all part of a very sensitive process.
It's not easy. I've heard it's one of the toughest deals of all, but I have a feeling that we're going to get there eventually. I hope.
I do look forward to our discussions, which I think are pregnant with possibility.
The hope comes from an unlikely customer, Iran. The administration believes Arab nations like Saudi Arabia would be willing to work more closely with Israel and stand together against a common enemy, thus advancing the peace process. Waleed Phares has consulted the president on Mideast peace.
He has the heart to it. He wants to achieve it as something big that no previous president has been able to solve. But realities are realities, not just in our politics here in the United States, but in the Middle East.
The president knows he'll have his hands full getting the Palestinians to the negotiating table. His meeting in Bethlehem with Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas was an attempt to see what's possible.
The problem is not between us and the Judaism. It's between us and occupation.
For his part, President Trump is keeping his cards close to the vest. He hasn't signaled yet what that peace process plan will be like exactly, and that's done intentionally. It's part of his deal-making DNA. The question then becomes, will his deal-making and his big personality be enough to push this process over the finish line? David Brody, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Joining us for some perspective on the president's recent trip is Middle East expert and author Joel Rosenberg. Joel, good to have you back on the show. How significant was the president's speech on Islam that he gave in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia?
That was an astounding speech. I think it was tremendously successful. It's not that the president said things that he hadn't said before, but he said them in Saudi Arabia. He was very clear about the differences between moderate Muslims, the vast majority, and Islamist radicals. But he was clear. He used that term, both Islamist radicalism, Islamic extremism, and he said it in Saudi Arabia, not only to the Saudis themselves, but to leaders of 50 Muslim countries. So here's the bottom line. You have a strategic realignment going on that's historic. That is, the Sunni Arabs and Israel want to work with the United States against two common and existential enemies, Iran and the Islamic State. And President Trump went in and said, that's what I want to work with you on.
From Saudi Arabia, President Trump flew directly to Tel Aviv, something that's never been done before. He was also the first sitting U.S. president to visit the Western Wall, and the first president, by the way, to visit a Christian site before a Jewish holy site. How significant, Joel, were these steps?
The president's trip to Israel was really fantastic, and I would argue that President Trump's trip to Israel was the most successful state visit of any American leader in decades. Why? In part because of how strained relations were over the last 8 years. Just the contrast of an American president coming and saying, we're your friend, we're not going to impose a peace process upon you, we're not going to criticize you for settlements, we're not going to, just the warmth, the chemistry, the strategic reset of the alliance. All of those things were important. It was a very meticulously planned trip to the Middle East, well executed. The president stayed on message, and that message was exactly the ones that Israel and the Sunni Arabs want. America is back. We're your ally. Iran and ISIS are the problems. How can we work together?
Evangelical response to his visit to Israel has been overwhelmingly supportive. Why is that?
Well, look, evangelical Christians want to see the president supporting Israel and being supportive of taking a stand against radical Islamic extremism. If there's a disappointment, it could be that the president said nothing about his promise to move the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. That's something he had promised to do, and that's something that's not so clear that he's going to follow through on. He hasn't said specifically that he won't, but he didn't even bring it up, even though he was there right on the eve of the 50th anniversary of the reunification of Jerusalem. Mm-hmm. However, this is not something that's bothering Israelis right now, and in the end, I don't think it'll bother evangelical Christians because A, the president doing so much on our issues, B, the embassy is a controversial issue in the region, and the president was avoiding controversy and working on strengthening the things that we commonly agree on. So overall, it was a big home run. Again, the most successful visit by an American president to the epicenter, to Israel and the Arab world, certainly in my lifetime. And I'm deeply encouraged. I think many evangelical Christians would be and should be.
Okay, terrific. Joel, as always, sir, thanks for coming on the show and thanks for your insights.
Thank you, George.
President Trump finished his world religion tour in Rome. He met with Pope Francis at the Vatican and presented the pontiff with a case of books from civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. The Pope gave Mr. Trump a medal with an olive branch, the symbol of peace. The two leaders, who have had disagreements over issues like immigration, then had a private meeting. Up next, Christians killed and kidnapped as militant Muslims launch an attack in the southern Philippines. Officials there are worried that ISIS is expanding its reach.
Folks, there's a power beyond the realm of human intellect.
In Pat Robertson's new DVD, Miracles, learn how you can experience God's power in your life.
You've said that there are 3 components to seeing miracles. What do you mean by that?
A power that can overcome any problem.
This is the normal inheritance of the children of God.
And see inspirational true stories of miracles.
Meet the real people who have come face to face with that power.
Medicine cannot explain this.
I felt the strength of God come.
I am being healed. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your copy of Miracles. Experience God's power in your life.
I felt God saying, I am in complete control.
This was a dead man. Now he's alive.
It's definitely a miracle.
Miracles. Experience God's power in your life.
Available now.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
And welcome back to the broadcast. In Egypt, the reports are between 10 to 12 gunmen fired on 2 buses with Coptic Christians southwest of Cairo. Egyptian state TV says at least 28 people were killed and 25 wounded in the attack. The buses were traveling on the road to the St. Samuel Monastery. ISIS has carried out several attacks against Egypt's Christians. in recent months. Officials in the Philippines say foreign fighters linked to ISIS are among the militants trying to take control of a southern city. The island of Mindanao has long been a base for homegrown Islamic radicals in the Philippines. Now government officials say they're getting outside help.
What's happening in Mindanao is no longer a rebellion of Filipino citizens It has transmogrified into invasion by foreign terrorists who heeded the clarion call of the ISIS to go to the Philippines if they find difficulty in going to Iraq or Syria.
The fighting in the Philippines, plus a bombing in Indonesia, has security officials in Asia on edge. Lucille Talusan has more on these recent events from Jakarta.
In Marawi City in southern Philippines, more than 60 people are dead as clashes continue between law enforcers and the Maute militant group. The Maute are members of the dreaded Abu Sayyaf that have pledged allegiance to ISIS. U.S.-trained special forces are fighting their way to retake the city that is being rampaged by the Maute terrorists. Hundreds of residents have fled in fear as they burned schools, churches, houses, and the city jail. At a Maute checkpoint, 9 Christians were forced out of their truck, hogtied and shot. A priest was also taken hostage by the terrorists.
I want to call for all to pray. St. Mary's Church was burned. Hostages were taken. One of them is Father Chito. We don't know what his fate is going to be.
Marawi City and the whole southern island of Mindanao is now under martial law to help solve terrorism and stop the group from spreading to other parts of the island. Meanwhile, in the neighboring country of Indonesia, 3 police officers were killed and 10 injured in a suicide bomb attack in East Jakarta. Human body parts and broken glass were scattered on the road, causing panic and fear among residents and commuters.
This is the bus terminal where the 2 bombs exploded, and authorities are saying that the attack was carried out by terrorists linked to the ISIS network as part of their global plan. It's been done already in Britain and then in the Philippines and now here in Indonesia.
Relatives mourn the death of the police officers. Indonesian President Jokowi Widodo has ordered a thorough investigation of the attacks and asked residents to remain calm and united against terrorism. What is alarming is that before the blast, children who identify themselves to be part of a Muslim radical group that is linked to ISIS were parading the streets chanting and shouting, "Kill Ahok." Ahok is the Christian governor of Jakarta who was jailed for blasphemy against the Quran. Authorities are still investigating if the parade was connected to the bombing. In the midst of the conflicts and the problems that Indonesia is currently facing, CBN Indonesia country manager Mark McClendon remains hopeful.
There are times it seems that darkness is winning, that terrorism is going to invade and things are going to get bad, but you know, God is able to redeem that. And the church in Indonesia is a praying church. You know, I believe that God will hear the prayer of the church and will redeem the situation. We'll see Indonesia come through this. I really believe that.
Lucille Talusan, CBN News, Jakarta.
Thanks, Lucille. Violence against religious minorities around the world is growing increasingly worse, so much so that the U.S. Congress is looking into ways to help them. Paul Strand brings us that story from Capitol Hill.
The crackdown against religious believers is soaring. Congressman Randy Hultgren, who chaired a hearing on these increasing attacks, said nearly 40% of countries covering most of the world's population now have high or very high levels of restrictions on faith.
This includes top-down government repression and bottom-up social hostility from individuals and groups.
A big question at this hearing: can peaceful supporters of religion actually do something to stop those who want to strike out and oppress religious people?
This is an ideological struggle as well as a military struggle. It's a battle of ideas, and that means we have to promote good ideas in the face of bad ideas.
Princeton professor Robert George, a former chair of the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, outlined part of the problem.
ISIS and like-minded terrorist groups are selling their ideology to young people around the world. Young Muslims, converts to Islam, they're winning converts to Islam into their particular extreme, radical, violent form of it, and we need to fight back.
Congressman Jim McGovern pointed out the U.S. needs to insist to all nations all people's religious freedom must be protected if anyone wants to be truly free.
Universal principles. My right to practice my religion is only as safe as my Muslim brothers, my Jewish sisters, my Hindu fathers, my Buddhist mother, my agnostic uncle, my atheist aunt. In order for me to enjoy freedom of religion, everyone else must enjoy it as well. That's the only way it works.
But George told CBN News it's rare for Western nations to stand up and push such crucial principles.
Too often in the West, we give nothing as an alternative. We don't defend our Christian beliefs. We don't defend Jewish beliefs. We don't defend the principles of the American founding, the principles of liberty and justice and equality, of religious freedom of speech, of freedom of assembly.
Hultgren and panelists at the hearing pushed for America to do more teaching, more preaching, lobbying, pressuring.
Promoting laws and social norms that bolster freedom of belief.
George pointed out why it's a crucial cause.
If we don't win this battle in the realm of ideas, we're going to have one heck of a hard time winning it on the battlefield.
And now 3/4 of humanity live in lands where their beliefs are repressed in one form or another.
One thing for sure, this struggle against religion is only getting worse by the year. Paul Strand, CBN News, Capitol Hill. When we come back, the church responds to the atrocity in Manchester, England.
Pat Robertson's new DVD, Miracles.
I knew it was God.
Meet real people who have experienced God's life-saving power.
God was taking care of us.
You'll discover the 3 components of miracles, the power of your words, and the abundant kindness and mercy God has for you.
Remember to keep on asking, keep on seeking, and you will receive.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. 8 years ago, my husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
When you give, smiles grow bigger. When you care, homes are happier. When you comfort, the hurt goes away. When we all come together to love, miracles happen.
And welcome back to the broadcast. The people of Manchester, England, are grieving the loss of 22 people in a horrific terror attack this week. The terrorists detonated a bomb as fans, most of them young girls, were leaving a concert at the city's arena. The killer was British-born but of Libyan descent. Police have arrested his father and 2 brothers in Libya, plus several other suspects in Manchester. The Islamic State has claimed responsibility for the attack. Meanwhile, the people of Manchester showed their love and support for the victims. Despite a heightened terror alert, thousands came to grieve, pray and mourn the lost at a prayer vigil. Manchester is known as a vibrant city with a strong church community. Pastor Anthony Delaney says churches will minister to the hurting.
In terms of what the church in Manchester is going to do, we're going to do what we always do. We're going to tell people that Jesus Christ is the way, the truth and the life, that there's love in heaven with everybody's name on it for every person in this city. In the Psalms it says the Lord is close to the brokenhearted, and we're going to keep on, in Jesus' name, trying to be close and available to help, to do the Good Samaritan thing Jesus told us to go to those in need and to be able to help as best we can. And if we can't help, stay out of the way and pray.
Good word. The Billy Graham Evangelistic Association is also responding to the tragedy, sending chaplains from its rapid response team to minister to the people of Manchester. You learn more about their efforts at the church's response to the Manchester bombings at our website, cbnnews.com. We'll be back right after this.
Kids, we want them to grow up knowing God's Word. But in today's busy world, sometimes we could use some help. The free Superbook Kids Bible app has fun stuff your kids will love. They'll have a blast learning the Bible, playing great games, watching cool videos,
Follow me!
discovering heroes in the Bible. They'll have fun while they learn God's Word. The Superbook Kids Bible app, available on iTunes and the Google Play Store.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. 8 years ago, my husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey, kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes and Google Play now.
And finally on the broadcast this week, U.S. President Donald Trump doesn't have a reputation as a devoutly religious man, yet on his trip to Jerusalem, he talked movingly about man's need for God and his own prayers. Take a look.
I visited the Western Wall and marveled at the monument to God's presence and man's perseverance. I was humbled to place my hand upon the wall and to pray in that holy space for wisdom from God. This city, like no other place in the world, reveals the longing of human hearts to know and to worship God. We see that God's promise of healing has brought goodness to so many lives. I ask this land of promise to join me to fight our common enemies, to pursue our shared values, and to protect the dignity of every child of God.
On that note, that is it for this week's edition of Christian World News. I hope you've been encouraged by our stories from around the world. From all of us here, until next week, goodbye and God bless you.